Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dibble Institute's second Wednesday webinar. I am Rachel Savasic-Luxton. I'm the Director of Research and Training here at the Dibble Institute, and I am thrilled to welcome you to our webinar today, Understanding the Story Your Youth Relationship Education Data is Trying to Tell You. We're honored and thrilled to have Dr. Kim Gregson, Dr. Stacy Keston, and Dr. Erin Cooper, who are friends of mine from times past and well, still today. But we're glad to have them all here on today's webinar as our presenters. But before I introduce them in our presentation today, I want to go over just a couple of housekeeping items. So if we can go to the next slide. The first thing is going to be, if you cannot hear this presentation, please do check your audio settings. They're located in the control panel of your webinar. If you're still having issues, we encourage you to dial in using the phone number you found in your invitation for today. I also want to note that the chat is currently open. We hope that you go in there, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from in that chat. You can find it in the control panel in Zoom. Like I said, we'd love to hear where you're joining us from today. I just want to point out that we will be opening and closing the chat throughout the presentation so that you can engage with our presenters at different points throughout the presentation. But if you have questions for us, please go ahead and direct those to the Q&A box. So go ahead and locate that in your control panel. All questions need to go in the Q&A box. We will have time at the end of the presentation. And by putting them in the Q&A box, we can make sure that they don't get lost in the mix of the chat as we go throughout that today. This also helps everyone from losing track of the handout that we will be sharing in today's presentation. Kim will be sharing that at the end of our presentation. So just keep an eye out for that. But again, chat is open. Please say hi, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from. But if you have questions, put those in the Q&A. And I already see some folks joining us and telling us where they're from. I just want to say hello and welcome to all of you in the chat so far. The last thing is that closed captioning is available and you can locate that and turn it on in your control panel if you choose to use it. Okay, so that's housekeeping stuff. Now I want to just talk a little bit more about the Dibble Institute. So if we go to our next slide here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to Charlie and Helen Dibble, our founders. Charlie did a lot of work with youth during his retirement, and he saw that a lot of them were having difficulties around their relationships, or when their parents were having difficulties in their relationship, that it was impacting the children that Charlie was working with. So he had the brilliant idea, being the Mr. Fix-It that he was, to translate research into evidence-based teaching tools that could then be made widely available. So the Dibble Institute itself is not a direct service provider, but we do develop research-based practices and make them available for other organizations and individuals to use with youth in their community. So a little bit more about us since our founding times by Charlie and Helen. If we go to the next slide, you're going to see that the Dibble Institute is a national independent nonprofit organization. We have clients operating in all 50 states who are providing direct services. And based on our conservative estimates, we believe that our clients reached almost 117,000 youth last year based on materials that they purchased. So we just want to take a moment and say how grateful we are to all of you who are here or who are joining us after and watching the recording for the important work that you are doing with young people. So thank you for that. Okay. Well, as a national independent nonprofit organization, what do we want to achieve? And I want to take a minute to highlight our mission. So if we go to the next slide, what really guides us first and foremost is our mission. And our mission is to empower youth and young adults with the skills to build and sustain healthy interpersonal and romantic relationships. We know that having these conversations with young people pulls a lot of levers like pregnancy prevention, dating violence prevention, mental health, job readiness, and so much more. So this is really core and key to the work that we do. But in addition to being guided by our mission, we're also guided by our values. And if we go to the next slide, you're going to see our very first one, which is that we are big believers in research, as you may have gathered by our topic today, learning from your youth relationship education data. With that, all of our programs too are research-based, and we continue to strive to have evaluations on our programs to continue to demonstrate their impact and their effectiveness. And this also means that as new research becomes available and new information becomes available, we update our programs to highlight what is new in the world of youth and youth relationship education. Another core value of ours that you'll see on the next slide is that we believe in safe, stable, and healthier nurturing families of all formations, and that this is our goal for young people to be raised in these families, and if they want them to have them for themselves in the future. And lastly, our next slide, you'll see that we believe that relationship education is for everyone. We can all learn how to do better and be better in our relationships, and that's what we strive to do with our program and our materials. So that's a little bit about the Dibble Institute, but I know you all are here today, not for us, but for our presenters. So I want to take a moment to formally introduce you to our presenters today. The first presenter that I want to highlight is Dr. Kim Gregson. She's a senior evaluator with Collaborators Consulting Group, who helps nonprofits, universities, and community initiatives use data and evaluation to strengthen programs, improve outcomes, and demonstrate impact. She has led large-scale evaluations of youth, couple, and family programs, including multi-year rigorous evaluations that were federally funded. And she's also known for making evaluation practical and approachable. She frequently facilitates training, webinars, as she is today, and workshops that help organizations use data to improve programs, tell a clear impact story, and better serve youth and families. I also want to take a moment to introduce Dr. Stacy Keston. She is the co-founder and principal consultant of Collaborate. That's a tough one. Y'all gave me some tongue twisters here. But the principal consultant of Collaborators Consulting Group, where she partners with nonprofits, foundations, universities, and federally funded initiatives to strengthen programs, understand impact, and support data-informed decision-making. Over the past 15 years, she has led research and evaluation projects across the United States and Canada, and known for her collaborative style and creative problem solving. Stacy helps organizations design practical evaluation approaches, make sense of complex challenges, and translate data into meaningful insights, stronger programs, and clear stories of impact. And not to be left out, Dr. Erin Cooper, who's working mostly in the background of today's presentation with her team. She is an applied researcher and program evaluator with nearly a decade of experience in large-scale multi-site evaluations. She, like her colleagues, is also highly skilled in generating insight, informing continuous quality improvement, and assessing program outcomes. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome our presenters and turn it over to them.
Rachel, I wish I could give you a hug across the states. It's so awesome to be here. Really awesome to be here with all of you. Love seeing all the locations you are in the chat. So thank you for coming. Whether you're a program director, youth educator, data manager, evaluator, or wearing 5 hats at once, this session is for you. Today, we're going to explore a simple idea. The data you're already collecting has a story to tell. And with a few intentional habits, it can become one of your organization's most powerful tools for learning, improving, and demonstrating impact. Huge gratitude to Dibble for this opportunity to collaborate on this webinar. We believe so deeply in Dibble's strong evidence and research-based curricula, and we're thrilled that so many of you are already partnering with them. So let's jump in first by hearing from you. When you registered for this webinar, we asked which aspect of evaluation feels most challenging for your organization right now. And here's what you told us. The biggest challenge was communicating your impact to others. Close behind was knowing what information you should collect. Others shared that they struggle with making sense of the data they already have or figuring out whether their program is really making a difference. Looking at these responses, I'd love for you to drop an emoji or a comment in the chat. We don't have the ability to do reactions in this in a webinar, but if you can just pick an emoji, how does this make you feel? Give us a thumbs up if this is right for you. This kind of resonates with you too. Maybe a hand if that especially represents your experience in your organization, and then maybe hearts just to represent if you're just finding out that you're not the only one struggling with those experiences. Yeah, seeing lots of thumbs up, some hearts. It's really evident from these responses and the ones that I'm seeing right now in the chat. The challenge is not about believing in your impact. You know the lives are changing. It's about understanding. the impact, strengthening it, and then communicating it clearly, telling that story. So that's exactly what today's process is designed to help you do.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So beyond your evaluation challenges that Kim just shared, we also asked what you hope to learn from today's webinar. And we were thrilled to see how much alignment between your interests and needs and what we are going to cover today. So dozens of you shared that you were most interested in learning how to use evaluation to improve programming, how to better capture and share your impact, how to better understand your data to strengthen implementation and delivery of your curriculum or curricula, and how to ask the right questions to help you capture that impact and tell that story. These are all such important topics, and there's really so much to learn and discuss about all of them. Honestly, each of these topics is worthy of its own full-length workshop. So please keep in mind that the time we have together today is only really enough to scratch the surface. But that being said, we are certainly confident that you'll leave with a few practical ideas that you can start using right away to harness the power of evaluative thinking and practice to deepen and communicate your impact. And at the end of the presentation, we'll share just a little bit about how we at CCG partner with organizations like yours to take your evaluation and storytelling to the next level. So before we go any further, we just wanted to pause and for a moment and name a reality that many of you are likely facing. Most youth serving organizations already carry a lot. You're delivering programming, you're recruiting and retaining youth, you're supporting families, you're collecting data, you're managing different federal data systems, you're preparing reports, and of course, thinking, and let's be honest, worrying about funding. Together, this is no small feat. The challenge that we've observed in our many, many years of working with organizations is that all of these responsibilities can start to feel and become disconnected. Programming usually happens like somewhere over here, performance measures happen over there. CQI processes become just another thing that you need to do or another meeting to fit into your schedule. Reporting, of course, has its own deadlines, and grant writing is always something that you have to scramble to do later. Today's session is certainly not about encouraging organizations like yours to do more. It's really about the importance of connecting all of these processes to better understand your program, improve it as you go, and tell a stronger story about the difference your work is making as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So before we go any further, we'd love to do what we at CCG call a quick baggage check. So if you feel inclined, type a word or a short phrase in the chat that describes how evaluation and data feels to you most of the time. And trust me, you're not going to offend us. We want to hear the good, bad, and ugly, all of it. Stressful, for sure. Complicated, can be. Yeah, I love that. Overly complicated.
Frustrating,
Yep.
time consuming, exciting, and sometimes overwhelming.
Sometimes hard to understand. I'd say a lot of the time, really hard to understand.
Someone asked us to repeat the question. Just what word or phrase pops into mind when you think about evaluation and data? How does it make you feel most of the time?
So I'd love for all of you to keep on adding these words and feelings. That's why we call it a baggage check. It's good to get them out. Just get them all out, and we are here to receive it and hopefully repackage it and present it back to you in a way that feels less stressful, less burdensome, and less complicated. So that is what we are hoping to accomplish today.
Yeah, we really appreciate keep the words coming. This is really it's also useful to see across each other that we all kind of can feel this way when approaching evaluation and data. So we designed today's objectives around what we've heard from organizations like yours. Again and again, people tell us they're looking for practical ways to communicate their impact with greater confidence. And even more importantly, to keep learning and increasing that impact over time. And it sounds like you're looking for the very same thing. First, today, we'll build the habits of a data-driven impact organization using our 4 impact habits. Second, we'll craft strong, meaningful evaluation questions using our Learn guidelines. And third, we're going to turn data into compelling stories and decisive action using the what, so what, now what framework. All 3 tools are included in the worksheet that you'll get at the end of this webinar. So don't worry too much about capturing every detail. We will also have all slides available at the end from Dibble if you also need. So our goal today is just for you to sit back and marinate with us and participate as much as you can. We have a lot of questions in the chat. We'd love to keep you active and hearing from you. So our goal is that you leave with practical ideas that you can start using as soon as you're back with your team. The ideas we're sharing today did not come from a textbook. They grew out of years of working alongside young people, practitioners, and organizations like yours. And a huge thanks to Rachel, who gave us such fabulous introductions. And we also want to pause and just give you a teensy bit more background. I'm Kim Gregson, Senior Evaluator with Collaborators Consulting Group. Before becoming an evaluator, I spent nearly a decade working directly with youth and families as a mental health therapist, high school educator, and nonprofit staff member. Those experiences shaped how I think about evaluation today. I learned that the strongest programs are not just well designed, but they build a whole culture of learning. They stay curious, they pay attention to evidence, and they use what they learn to strengthen their impact. Over the past decade, I've had the privilege of leading rigorous federally funded evaluations of youth and adult relationship education programs, including randomized control trials and quasi-experimental studies serving thousands of participants. I've also worked with very small organizations serving small numbers of youth. What I love most is partnering with organizations like yours, not just to evaluate programs, but to understand what's working, strengthen implementation, and tell a clearer story about the difference that you're making.
And I'm Dr. Stacey Keston. I'm a co-founder and principal consultant at Collaborators Consulting Group, and I currently also serve as outgoing president of Arizona's Evaluation Network. I've spent the better part of the last 20 years partnering with community-based organizations, coalitions, and foundations across Canada and the United States to help them harness the power of evaluation and strategic learning in ways that are practical, meaningful, and useful. So I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we have an incredible team of interdisciplinary researchers, evaluators, and strategists at CCG that bring a wide range of backgrounds and expertise beyond myself, Kim, and our colleague, Erin. Big shout out to Erin for holding down the chat and making sure our slides are on point. At CCG, we're dedicated to helping organizations and funders create sustainable and transformative change. Our approach to evaluation is actually quite unique. It is learning-oriented, participatory, strengths-based, and utilization-focused. In practice, this means we help organizations use evaluation, not just to satisfy reporting requirements, but they'll get that too, but really to strengthen their learning culture, make more intentional and strategic decisions, and ultimately deepen the impact in the communities that they serve. That is the lens we are bringing to today's session. So over the many years of experience that Kim and I just shared, we've had the privilege of working alongside many youth-serving organizations. Some were brand new to evaluation, while others had sophisticated systems already in place. And after doing this work for so many years, we found ourselves asking, what are the most impactful organizations doing differently? What truly sets them apart? And over time, we realized that they share a few key characteristics that help them be strategic in their learning. We eventually started calling them impact organizations. Interestingly, these organizations weren't necessarily the biggest. Most often, they weren't the best funded or the ones collecting the most data. What set them apart was how they learn from the data that they collect. We created this acronym to capture the characteristics we've consistently seen across these organizations. Impact organizations investigate with curiosity. They measure intentionally. They paint their story with evidence. They act on what they learn. They create lasting impact and they thrive together.
This next analogy will feel pretty familiar to most of you in the youth relationship education field. Every day, you help young people build healthy relationships. And you know that a lot of that is convincing them that it takes work. And healthy relationships don't happen by accident. They grow through curiosity, listening, honest conversations, reflection, making repairs when something isn't working, and continuing to grow together over time. Healthy impact organizations grow in nearly identical ways. They ask thoughtful questions about their programs. They intentionally listen to youth, staff, and community voices. They reflect together on real evidence and data. They tell a clear story with their data. They make effective data-informed improvements, and they use what they learn to grow with each new cohort. So, if an impact organization is what we all want to build, where do we start? The good news is it starts with 4 simple habits. One of the defining characteristics of these organizations is that they intentionally harness the power of data and evaluation. First, they begin with curiosity, asking meaningful questions about their program that they genuinely need to understand. Second, they're intentional about evidence. They carefully identify the data or evidence that will best answer their question instead of trying to collect everything. Third, they tell a compelling story. They connect this intentional evidence, making sense of the story and clearly communicating the impact they're making. Finally, they turn learning into action, using what they've learned to strengthen their programs, make thoughtful decisions, and then continue growing. For the remainder of our presentation, we're going to deep dive into these 4 habits.
So first, we're going to start with habit number 1, which is to begin with curiosity. And honestly, this is probably my favorite habit. This is the biggest light bulb moment we see organizations have when we work with them. A lot of organizations naturally start by asking, what data do we have? They examine survey results, attendance records, facilitator notes. They create dashboards and spreadsheets. And then they try to figure out what all of it means. That, as you can imagine, can be extremely overwhelming. We are professional evaluators, and that would be extremely overwhelming for us. But the highest impact organizations that we've worked with do something different. Before they even collect or look at the data, they pause intentionally and together they ask, what do we most want to or need to learn? That is a small shift, but it is a monumental shift and it changes everything. Instead of trying to make sense of every number and every report in isolation, you're looking at evidence that answers one or a small set of meaningful questions. Suddenly, the data becomes much more manageable because you know exactly what you're looking for. That's why we always encourage organizations to start with the question, not the spreadsheet. Start with your curiosity, start with your needs. Once you know what you're trying to learn, planning what to collect, how to collect it, how to analyze it, how to tell your story will all flow together quite seamlessly after that, and you'll end up with a much clearer story.
So before today's webinar, we asked you to get curious. At registration, we asked if you could get a trustworthy answer to one question about your program tomorrow, what would you ask? And you delivered. We received dozens, no, maybe not thousands, that would be a little strong, dozens of thoughtful questions. And these are just a few that stood out. Are we making a difference? How meaningful is the program to students when it isn't voluntary to take? What impact does our programming have on creating safer relationships? Whether what we're teaching is making a positive difference in students' lives. And the question in the middle we'll use as an example throughout today's webinar. This came from you. Are young people actually applying the skills they learn in our program in their everyday relationships after the program ends? Take a look at these for a second. If one really resonates with you, drop an emoji in the chat, let us know. And if another question comes to mind, feel free to add that one too. This is where we get curious. This is the really fun part. As you're thinking about this and dropping some of your own questions in the chat, just notice something. These are not questions about checking a report, checking some boxes for a funder. These are questions about really understanding young people better, strengthening your programs, and creating greater impact. Questions like these are excellent starting points. And we've learned, yeah, thank you. It's a great question about voluntary. And we've learned that taking the time to carefully craft a strong evaluation question changes everything that comes next. The quality of your question shapes the evidence you collect, the story you tell, and ultimately the decisions you make. This step is crucial, and this is the one that's most often missing. So we actually spend quite a bit of time helping organizations refine their evaluation questions because they're that important. We won't have time to do that in depth today, but we are going to make we're going to show you a simple framework that will help you strengthen your questions like these almost immediately.
So like we just learned,
coming too.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
So like we just learned, we begin with curiosity, like you've already done. And then that curiosity turns into a question that's focused enough to actually guide learning. So some people call these evaluation questions. Others call them learning questions. Others call them guiding questions. We don't really get too hung up on terminology. What matters is that it's the question that guides everything else. At CCG, we use a simple guideline called LEARN to help us craft strong evaluation questions. And we want to teach it to you here today. These questions are linked to your logic model, meaning it connects to your program's purpose and intended outcomes. These questions are easy to understand, so staff, partners, and funders can all recognize what you are trying to learn and be on the same page. These questions are actionable, so the answer will actually help you make decisions. Decision making is key in this process that we're talking about today. These questions are also realistic so that you can answer it or them with information that you already collect or could reasonably collect. These questions, lastly, are narrow enough that you can answer them well. So we're not going to spend time working together to refine your questions today, but if you begin using these 5 guidelines, you'll immediately start asking questions that lead to clearer evidence, stronger stories, and better decisions. We made a slight refinement to one of your questions, your evaluation questions, using the LEARN guidelines. We could spend, as Kim said, so much more time sharpening, but even this small change makes the question more useful and is a great example for today's webinar.
So we've just spent time on the foundation with habit 1, the strong evaluation question. Now, let's imagine you've crafted this question that means a lot to your team, that's going to help you tell your impact to your funder, that your community cares about. You've got your strong question. Now, what comes next? This is the simple framework we use with organizations to move from a great question to meaningful action. Many of you may recognize this as Terry Borton's what, so what, now what framework. We love it because it's simple, memorable, and incredibly practical. It maps beautifully onto the next 3 impact habits we'll talk about today. First, what? Habit 2, be intentional about evidence. What do we observe in the evidence that addresses our evaluation question? Next, so what? Habit 3, tell a compelling story. What does that evidence actually mean? What's the story beginning to emerge? And finally, now what? Habit 4, turn learnings into action. Based on what we've learned, what should we start, stop, or sustain? Notice that everything builds from the evaluation question. A strong question guides the evidence, the story, and then the decisions. This what, so what, now what framework is useful internally because it helps teams move from data to use. It also is useful externally because it could help you tell a clear, simple story. You could create a 1-page brief organized around what, so what, now what, a board report, a funder update, even a full evaluation or impact report could be built from the same basic sequence. So this is not just a reflection tool, it's a practical storytelling tool. It helps you communicate what you found, why it matters, and how you're using it to strengthen your program. Okay, we're going to begin with habit 2, being intentional about evidence, where we're asking what.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, Here we now land on habit two. Again, many organizations start from a really understandable place. We need more data. But most of the time, the issue is not that organizations need additional data. From our experience, there is an overabundance of data. The bigger challenge is knowing which data or information actually helps you answer the question in front of you. So instead of starting with, what else do we need to collect? We suggest your organization ask, what data or evidence will best answer our question? That shift helps keep evaluation, continuous quality improvement, and reporting efforts focused. It also helps protect your team from collecting information just because you can or just because it might be interesting. And on that note, it also helps participants avoid being overburdened with having to provide data as well. The goal is purposeful evidence, information that helps you understand something important, make a decision, improve the program, and or tell a clearer story about your impact.
A big mindset shift is realizing that there isn't one best type of data or evidence. There are dozens of possible sources. On the left in blue are examples of quantitative evidence, things like attendance, survey results, percentages, and trends over time. On the right in pink are examples of qualitative evidence, interviews, quotes, observations, stories, photos, other experiences that help us understand what's happening. Neither is inherently better. Both are valuable and contribute different pieces of the picture, and they often complement one another. In evaluation, we talk about triangulation, bringing together different data sources to build a fuller understanding. Sometimes these different sources reinforce the same story, and other times they diverge and create very important gaps or further questions to examine. So as you look at your carefully crafted evaluation question, think intentionally about which combination of evidence will best answer it. Whenever possible, draw from multiple sources to tell a richer, more trustworthy story. Okay, we're going to apply habit two to your evaluation question on the left. To what extent are young people actually applying the skills they learn in our program in their everyday relationships after the program ends? Now, be really clear, the evidence on this slide is completely made up. Don't take it out of context. It is, we made this up completely. Just for today's example, if we had more time, we would actually help you identify the best data indicators for answering this question, and we would build what we call an MEL plan, a monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan. It's very simple. It maps out exactly what data to collect, when, and how, and it's so, for the organizations we work with, so reassuring and calming because it's more focused and clear. For our simple example, let's imagine we choose 3 pieces of data to collect and find these results. 76% of participants reported using at least one relationship skill in a real-life situation during the past month. Second, participants reported using healthy relationship skills much more frequently 3 months after the program than before it. And then finally, one participant shared, when my boyfriend and I started arguing, I used the timeout strategy instead of texting something that I would regret. We ended up talking it through later using the speaker listener technique. Now, these 3 pieces of evidence are far from comprehensive. If we were doing this together, we'd probably choose several stronger and more nuanced indicators, but they're enough to illustrate the idea. Every piece of data that you collect should be intentionally chosen because it helps answer your question. Remember, this is the what step in our what, so what, now what framework. So we're going to pause for a second and observe these 3 pieces of evidence. Without overthinking it, pop in the chat. What's one word that comes to mind after looking at these 3 pieces of evidence? What's one thing you notice? Skills are being used, reported. It looks like they're applying the skills according to our fake evidence that we kind of stacked. Combo of statistics and an example. It's great. Okay, we don't have time to go much deeper into this today, but this step often involves thoughtful quantitative and qualitative analysis. This is where organizations sometimes partner with an external evaluator, whether it's us or other evaluators on this call, to help organize the evidence, notice patterns, ask good follow-up questions, analyze the data, make sure we're seeing the fullest picture before jumping to conclusions. Great comments, y'all.
So in habit 2, we were choosing strong data sources that map onto our evaluation question and using the what, so what, now what framework. We were observing what that data reveals, noticing patterns and observing themes. Okay, now let's move from evidence to meaning in habit 3, telling a compelling story. This habit is all about the so what. This is also the world's fastest evaluation you'll ever be part of.
45 minutes, 1 hour.
So habit 3 is where everything starts coming together. If you've done the first 2 habits well, which you're going to because you're in this webinar right now, this step becomes so much easier. You started with a meaningful evaluation question, then you intentionally collected evidence designed to answer that question. So now you're not starting at a spreadsheet wondering, what should we say about all of this data? Instead, you're asking, so what does this evidence tell us about the question we set out to answer? That's the difference between simply reporting data and telling a compelling story. Many organizations stop at, here's our data. They share charts, percentages, quotes, and observations. Impact organizations, the ones that we were speaking about at the top of the webinar, they go this one step further. They connect the evidence back to the original evaluation question and explain what it means. And they do that even when maybe sometimes what comes out of it isn't what they had hoped for or is maybe surprising. That's why this process feels so much simpler than trying to create an impact story from scratch. The question has already given your story a purpose, a structure, and the evidence has already given it direction. Your job is now quite simple. It's just to connect the dots.
At CCG, we use a few simple prompts to help organizations think about this step, the so what. What do these findings mean? These are meant to help your team interpret the story coming from the evidence. So here's some of our prompts. This suggests that one possible explanation is this matters because we were surprised that this makes us wonder. We need more data about. None of this is rocket science. But when you do this in sequence and in process, what happens is incredibly magical. So we don't have time today to go into our full storytelling process, but these prompts are a simple place to start. So we're going to go back to your evaluation question and our made-up evidence and see what this kind of interpretation might sound like. So using that evaluation question that came directly from you, to what extent are young people actually applying the skills they learn in our program in their everyday relationships after the program ends? You can see that at the top. And then for habit number 2, we intentionally gathered a few pieces of evidence that could help answer that question. And you can see those 3 pieces of evidence in the middle made up. Remember, we're just using those to demonstrate. Now comes habit 3, where we ask, so what does this evidence actually mean for our evaluation question? Instead of reporting separate data points, we bring them together into one meaningful story. The evidence suggests that many young people aren't just learning relationship skills, they're beginning to use them in real life situations after the program ends. That's encouraging because lasting impact happens when learning transfers beyond the classroom. It also makes us wonder, what helps these skills stick for some youth more than others? And how can we create even more opportunities for them to practice? Notice how that data-driven story naturally follows the prompts we just looked at. This suggests that this matters because this makes us wonder. Again, we're keeping this example intentionally small and simple. If we were partnering with your organization, we would spend much more time helping you craft richer, more nuanced impact stories that reflect what your data are saying. But notice the progression: question to intentional evidence to data-driven story.
So we're super excited. We finally made it in record time to habit number 4. what we're turning learnings into action with the big question, now what?
This is our final habit of impact organizations. Too often, organizations work incredibly hard to collect data, analyze it, write the report, and then the report gets filed away in an old Dropbox folder, buried in a cabinet, never looked at again. I think I saw a comment in there about this very thing
And it
from one of
breaks
you.
our hearts.
And it really is. It just is so deflating for you too. When you do so much work to collect this data and you know the impact you're having, and then it gets sidelined and the story is not really told. Um, so if you've seen this, maybe not in your own organization, maybe so, just give us a clap, raised hand, some sort of a reaction. If you've ever seen a report filed away to never be seen again, show us some kind of reaction in the chat. Okay. Oh, that's a good emoji for that one. That is such a good emoji. Thank you for the sad. Yes. Yes, thank y'all. You're nailing these emojis. That's exactly how we feel and how even our communities feel because they know this work is meaningful. So, what we want to say today is that impact organizations do something completely different. For them, the report or the story isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. They bring the team together around the questions they started with. They look at the evidence, they reflect on the story it tells, and then comes the exciting step. They ask, now what?
This is the step that transforms evaluation from a reporting exercise into a tool for growth and better decision making. Now comes the most important question. What are we going to do because of what we've learned from our evaluative activities? At CCG, we actually hold what we affectionately call data parties, and they are tons of fun. They're some of our favorite meetings to facilitate. They are full of energy and they are just really special. We bring everyone together in terms of the partners that we're working with and their interest holders, from program staff to leadership, to look at the same evidence, share different perspectives on that evidence, make sense of what they're seeing, and then ask three simple questions. Based on the evidence, what should we start doing that they aren't doing right now? What should we stop doing that's really not serving you anymore? And what should we sustain because it's already working so well? Those conversations are incredibly energizing because everyone is focused on learning. They're not focused on defending the data or checking a reporting box. They're focused on genuine learning. Over the years, we've learned that the best decisions most always come from the people closest to the work. But those decisions are infinitely stronger when they're grounded in clear evidence and a shared understanding of what that evidence means. The data doesn't replace professional judgment. It equips your team to make decisions with confidence and communicate clearly to leadership, boards, funders, and community partners.
Okay, let's finish walking through your example. We started with your evaluation question. To what extent are young people actually applying the skills they learn in our program in their everyday relationships after the program ends? Then we intentionally chose evidence that could answer that question. Then we pulled those pieces together into a meaningful story, 1 hour or less. We just snapped out this evaluation. And finally, we ask, now what? So that our data can turn into action. Based on this fictional evidence, maybe we decide to start giving youth a simple real life relationship challenge after each session that encourages youth to practice one skill before the next meeting. Maybe we decide to stop assuming the final survey tells the whole story and instead use supplemental interviews or focus groups to understand how skills are being used, maybe daily diaries. And we definitely want to sustain creating a safe environment where youth feel comfortable sharing honest experiences. Now, these are just a handful of possibilities. If this were your program with your question that matters in your community and your real data, your team would generate a thoughtful list of actions for your work. Many organizations make decisions based on experience or observations or their gut instinct, and sometimes those instincts are exactly right. But high impact organizations thoughtfully ask questions that matter to them, collect intentional data, interpret the story, and then make decisions. When your decisions are grounded in meaningful evidence, they're easier to communicate, easier to justify, and more likely to earn the trust and support of your board, funders, partners, and community.
So we have covered a lot today, but remember, you don't have to implement everything tomorrow. The goal is never perfection. It's simply to take one next step toward becoming a more data-driven, impactful impact organization. So we'd love to hear from you. In the chat, type the number of the habit you're most excited to strengthen in your own work. Is it begin with curiosity, or being more intentional about the evidence, or telling a compelling story, or turning learnings into action? We got a lot of twos, fours, threes. Love it. So the important thing is that you've identified one area, or you will identify one area where you can begin growing. That's how organizations build a culture of learning and impact, one intentional habit at a time.
It is really cool to see your responses there. So we really do hope that each of you leaves today with one habit that you're excited to strengthen. And over time, the goal isn't just to get better at one habit, it's to connect all four. Why? Because that's where the magic is. Each habit depends on the others. Curiosity without evidence leaves you guessing. Evidence without storytelling becomes a spreadsheet that people skim and forget. Storytelling without action is inspiring, but nothing changes. And action without curiosity just sends us right back to making decisions based on gut intuition instead of data. High impact organizations don't treat these as four separate habits. They connect them into one continuous learning process. Curiosity starts it, evidence strengthens it, storytelling gives it meaning, and action creates impact. So we're wrapping up and we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. We totally enjoyed this 1 hour magical evaluation in an hour or less with all of you. We really, really love your chats, and I would love so much to actually be in conversation with you. We enjoy that much more. But we do want to leave you with one invitation. Today, we just scratched the surface of what it means to become a data-driven impact organization. Building these habits doesn't happen in a single webinar. It happens over time. One thing that's really special about Collaborators Consulting Group is that we're not just evaluators. We're folks who care deeply about young people and the organizations serving them. Many of us are former educators, therapists, nonprofit staff members, and community volunteers. We understand both the heart of this work and the practical challenges that come with it. If you'd like to continue this conversation, we would genuinely love to connect. Just scan the QR code and tell us a little about your organization, or email us directly. Whether you need an ongoing external evaluation partner or want to have exploratory conversations about what these habits could mean for your work, we're really happy to think through ways we might support you. We even offer a 6-session iHeart Eval series exploring these practices in much more depth with lots of tools. And Stacey's sporting our iHeart Eval mug right now.
Swag
Lots
mug.
of tools, handouts, and real-time practice. Erin too, amazing. I don't know where mine is. Most of all, thank you. The work you're doing matters, and we hope today's webinar gives you a few practical tools to help your programs create even greater impact. And Dibble, thank you so much for supporting this work that changes the lives of countless young people nationwide.
I want to say thank you in advance for the iHeart Eval cup that I'm sure is in the mail heading my way.
It's coming.
An entire swag bag. We have so much other swag. It's so fun.
I love it. Well, I want to say thank you to the three of you being on today. I mean, everybody who's here today, but for telling this story about how to storytell with youth relationship education data. A quick thing I will never forget sitting in school reading research articles. I won't say how long ago, but wondering the so what. So hearing y'all emphasize the so what and what to do with that just really resonates. And I think a lot of people sometimes who are doing this are so focused on the work that they can directly see with young people, and the data might not seem as important. But as y'all just said here, there's so much information that can be gathered, that can be used in moving forward and, informing the work that they're doing, kind of supporting the work that they're doing, and helping to continue to, make the case for the cause, right? And to continue programming that they're working on. So I just want to say thank you to you all and for putting it. And like you said, I think that was the fastest evaluation I've ever seen and the simplest way to take it all in and on. So if all evaluations run like that, I mean, what more could you ask for? I'm not sure. I haven't checked out the Q&A, but I'll give some people some time to respond. I was wondering too, I know we had this start with curiosity. Some folks might have the curiosity, but not all work that they do may come with a survey, right? We know some funding initiatives say, hey, here's this data, collect this data. So what would you recommend to those folks who are like, where do I start if they don't already have that kind of option?
That's an excellent question, Rachel. And this is like, that's a whole nother webinar
That's
because
a whole other webinar.
most, yeah, because most of you, especially if you're federally funded, and even if you are getting other sources of funding, you have these required um, performance measures that you're tracking and required outcomes that you're supposed to show to the funder. And so part of this is even in your early grant process where you're really crafting strong goals, strong outcomes, strong mapping onto a very, very strong logic model. That's a really important key phase. But and one thing that what we suggest organizations do is that they don't think just about what the funder wants to know, but they think about what they need to know about their program because that's the step that doesn't happen. Most of the time, their organizations have so much on their plate and so much to do with just gathering that data for the funder. And that data can very well answer the questions that they need too. And so if they can identify those, in an ideal world, if they can make some of those the same as what they're doing for the funder, then that's perfect. But what we find is that to really tell your impact, you need to define what matters and how we think these things are happening. So let's define the question so that then we can get the evidence to show that.
Yeah. I was also going to add to, there's we offered there's two things that I wanted to add. One is Kim said something about starting with what you want to learn or what you need to learn. And I think that it is that latter question, that kind of like that latter one around needs, that's really important. And you can take funders out of the equation here because you can say, what do my facilitators need to know about how we're doing our work or what we're doing or what is most effective? What do our community members need to know about our programming? So if you start from that place of what are the things that we absolutely need to know, that kind of triggers all sorts of creative juices for identifying those curiosities regardless. The other thing that I was going to share is we had shared kind of a list of prompts in the slide deck. Around kind of the making sense of your data. We also have some prompts that we routinely use with organizations to help them think about their curiosities and to translate those curiosities into questions. So one of the prompts that I love most is we work with a lot of organizations that make a lot of claims. No judgment there, but they make claims. So the first question that we always ask is, what claim would you like to make where you have evidence to back up that claim, right? Aside from anecdotal evidence or aside from very interpretive stretches. So there's all sorts of prompts that we can use to help organizations really kind of marinate on those curiosities and translate those curiosities into questions.
I love that. And thank you, because I think what y'all are saying too just highlights how to really ignite that fire to, I heard you say, like in the facilitators, right? Helping them understand even further the importance and the impact of the work that they're going to be doing out in their community. So it's not just making the case to your community why this needs to be done, but helping everyone who's a part of the agency and beyond really understand the impact that they're going to be having by doing whatever program it is that they're doing. Love Notes, Relationship Smarts, Mind Matters Plus right now, just but really helping to understand that impact. And again, I think sometimes data, it's like they're just numbers, but there are kids behind those numbers. And like you said, it really helps when you can see that you've got more than just anecdotal kind of data and talking points, but there's other stronger evidence to kind of support that and bolster those arguments. So with that, I'm not sure. I'm not ignoring the Q&A. I just haven't focused on it. But I was just curious to see too, with that, like what type of data to collect? You know, how would you recommend? I hear you kind of talking about the getting curious and focusing on that. We know that there's different types. There's the qualitative. I mean, y'all were kind of highlighting some of the different ways to collect that information. How do you help folks figure out what's the best type of data to collect to tell their story? Or maybe what types, right? If it's more than one.
Stacey, I'm going to pass this to you. I have a dog barking.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think so. We can talk about a couple rules of thumb. One of them came up in the presentation. We always strongly encourage multiple data sources. So even if it feels like, okay, we just want to see changes in confidence, right? Maybe in self-efficacy or confidence to be able to apply a skill. Even if it seems really simple, we always encourage have multiple data sources so that you can triangulate. You can bring all those data sources together to see if there's convergence or divergence. So whatever the data sources might be, we always encourage multiple. So it doesn't have to be overboard, like 10 different data sources or 10 different data points, but it should include some type of quantitative data, especially with youth relationship education. There are lots of things that you can measure quantitatively. If you're going to measure quantitatively, we always recommend that you have some qualitative method. So whether that's testimonials, whether those are like diaries, like Kim brought up, whether those are interviews or focus groups, some other type of words or narrative that can help explain the quantitative results. Right? So it's that combination of having multiple data sources so that you can put them all together and you can be really, really, really sure about what the data is telling you. Or you can be sure that we don't know what the data is telling us because the data is pointing us in two different directions. So that would be the first rule of thumb, multiple data sources. And the second rule of thumb is if you collect quantitative data, make sure that you have some qualitative data to help explain what the quantitative data might be telling you.
Yeah, I love that because
Yeah, I do too. I'll quickly add in there too. I love the way she's fleshing that out. And because a lot of you are probably collecting performance measures and there's a lot of obligatory data that honestly ends up not getting used by you. It's like the funder gets it and it's really not that instrumental for you. Sometimes, you might be doing your reports on it, but finding we don't want to overburden youth, and youth are especially difficult with data collection. So what we end up doing, we do a lot of creative data collection with youth. So like very arts based, very in the moment, ratings that or we do candy surveys, or we do, like photo things, but that type of data is so powerful and it really does flesh out. It may not be what your funder is requiring, but you do that and you plan out how to collect that type of data, and that gets you a very strong story. And then when you write that grant application, you have a very different a way to tell this story, your impact more comprehensively.
oh, thank you. I just think it's important, like that y'all were highlighting that data doesn't just have to be numbers, right? And that it probably shouldn't just be numbers, and that you can gather this really important and useful information through other sources. So with that, I want to say thank you again to Collaborators Consulting Group. That's not as bad now that I practiced it a couple more times. No, and Erin and Stacy and Kim for being with us and walking us through and making, data collection and storytelling seem maybe less scary than what it can be for folks who are not used to doing this kind of work. So I want to go ahead and note that the webinar is being recorded. If we can go to that next slide. Just a quick thank you for joining us today. There will be a brief survey that pops up automatically. We really appreciate any feedback. This is also a great opportunity to ask for any question or ask any questions that you may not have gotten to today. You'll get the handout and a PDF of the slides as well as a recording for this presentation emailed to you in just a couple of days. So be on the lookout for that. And we also hope that you look out and consider joining us for next month's webinar. If we go to that final slide on August 12th, that is how teams get stuck navigating relationship skills and real life, with one of our own Dibble staff members kind of collaborating on that call, as well as Mary McCoy Thompson. So we hope to see you all there. We thank you all again for being here today on this Wednesday. And yeah, hope you start telling stories with your data, or continue to do that and share them with us as well, because we love hearing them. So have a great one, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks so much.